news lately, there's a growing public clamor for increased government handouts. We call them bailouts, we call them welfare, we call them farm subsidies, we call them Social Security, we call them education, we call them a lot of things, but they're basically free handouts. Alright, there's a problem with that. And this problem was expressed allegedly by a gentleman named Lord Woodhouse Lee, and Alexander Fraser Tytler, I guess is how you pronounce his name. And he didn't say this, but he's credited with it. Says, a democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. The average age of the world's greatest civilizations from the beginning of history has been about 200 years. During those 200 years, these nations always progressed through the following sequence: from bondage to spiritual faith, from spiritual faith to great courage, from courage to liberty, from liberty to abundance, from abundance to complacency, from complacency to apathy, from apathy to dependence, from dependence back into bondage. Now we're at the apathy to dependence stage now. You know, as long as it's not in my backyard, we really don't care. You know, if you're not gay and gays are having problems somewhere, you really don't care. You're apathetic toward it. If you're not enthusiastic about the environment, you really don't care about the people who are. You know, we're apathetic. We care about ourselves and our interest only, with no real attempt to consider other people. Now, the problem is entitlements. Now, entitlements are programs set up that if you meet a certain criteria, you automatically get the benefits of that program. All right, this is Social Security, this is food stamps. At the federal level, it also includes farm subsidies and other budget items, and I'll have the website up so that you can check these figures for yourself. Well, the problem is entitlements, and that entitlements, like we said, is education, Social Security, food stamps, farm subsidies, and corporate bailouts. All right. Now we, the people, love the government tip. Okay, a prime example of this occurred earlier this year when the voters of California, faced with a broke government, all right, and this is before they started issuing IOUs, and their politicians are telling them, look folks, we've got to make some hard choices here, or we're going to have to start issuing IOUs, right? And so they put these proposals before the voters. Primarily it was about extending a current tax they're already paying and cutting certain things from the budget. Well, the people of California resoundingly voted no, not just no, but hell no. We're not cutting. We're not going to extend the taxes. We're not going to pay more money in, but we're not going to accept less out. You're broke. We elected you to figure out where the money comes from. And what they fail to understand is the money comes from us. And if we're not going to give more money, then something's going to have to give. We can't operate in a deficit forever, because deficits, as we've seen, grow. All right. So anyway, these people in California, the government is telling them we're broke. We don't have enough money to get through the end of the year. We can't buy food for the prisons. We can't pay the light bill at the Capitol building, right? We do not have the money. We've got to get the money from somewhere. People said no, so the government, what can they do? Oh, they're brilliant. We elect the most brilliant people, of course. They start issuing IOUs. Now, my first exposure to an IOU was, I think, Wimpy giving Popeye an IOU on a Popeye cartoon, okay, for a hamburger. All right, so you've got this bum who's living off of the charity of others issuing IOUs. Now, is that the image our governments are wanting to portray? Well, the government of California does. Okay, now this was reported in the Wall Street Journal, and I'll put the website up for that. While I was researching some of this stuff, I took a political quiz. A friend of mine took it, so I decided to take it too. And the question asked me whether I agreed to this statement. Government should ensure that all citizens meet a certain minimum standard of living. Okay. Government should ensure that all citizens meet a certain minimum standard of living. Okay, here's the deal. If government gets involved in this, then they will ensure that all citizens meet a certain minimum standard of living. Notice that said all. You start trying to, if the government starts trying to redistribute the wealth, which is socialism, then you wind up with everybody being equal. Now, the bad part about this is if you've got a guy who's got some sense and is willing to take a risk with some money and to make some money, what's his reward for taking that risk? Maybe I can make a lot of money, buy my mama that new house, get some dubs for the Escalade, whatever. Okay, so people are motivated to get lots of money. Okay, some of us claim we're not, but you know, go live under a bridge for a month, you'll be screaming for money. All right. If there's no incentive for somebody to step up, take the risk because there's a great reward, then nobody's going to. All right. Entrepreneurship will die. All right, because, well, what am I going to work for? They're going to take my money and give it to people now. Working class people feel that way already. I know I feel that way. I see bums riding the buses that I drive every day, and they're fat and happy and sassy. They've got cell phones. They've got iPods. They go on the computer every day. They've got active accounts on Facebook and stuff like that, and they don't work at all. They don't hit a lick of a snake. They ride the free public transit here. They eat the free meals at the churches, and a lot of them have food stamp cards. You know, 140 bucks a month, I think, is what a single guy can get if he's got no job. Well, whose pocket's that coming out of? Right. I'm supporting at least one of these guys every month, more of my money. Anyway, so how do you fix this? Entitlements are completely out of control. We're spending, in 2009, and I'm doing this from memory, our federal budget was roughly $3 trillion. Okay, $3 trillion. That's 3 with a lot of zeros. That's 1,000 times, all right. A trillion is 1,000 times more than a billion. A billion is 1,000 times more than a million. We have a budget of $3 trillion. 2 of the 3 trillion, just shy of 2 trillion, 60, I did the math, 62% of the federal budget is going out on entitlements. All right. This is just giving money to people. For example, a farm subsidy. A farm subsidy is money you're giving a guy because his cost of production is higher per unit than the market pays per unit. If you grow 1,000 bushels of 1,000 bushels of soybean, and they give you $1 a bushel for it, you just made $1,000. But if you're paying $2,000 a year on payments and fuel, tractor payments, combine payments, cotton picker payments, fuel, any of that stuff, you cannot make it. So what does the government? Gives them money to make up the difference. That's basically, it's a subsidy. All right, we have education. Somehow we got it into our head that everybody's entitled to an education. You're only entitled to what you can get yourself or what your family can help you get. That's all you're entitled to. All right. You don't have a right to be educated. You have a right to try to be educated. You have a right to pursue happiness. Nothing ever guaranteed you that you were going to catch happiness. You have the right to pursue it. So, if you want an education, you can get an education. If you want a job, you can get a job. If you don't have any jobs where you live at, move. Move here. We just hired a half a dozen to a dozen new guys, paying them $9 an hour. Okay? So, now, the way to solve this is you fix entitlement spending at a percentage of GDP. Now, I recommend 12% for this, okay? I've done some research, and